Hello and welcome to SOAR. This is the Sisters Overcoming and Rising podcast, and I am Dr. Stephanie Brown, your host, the favorite life coach and physician. So today I'm doing something a little bit different. I am doing a podcast episode without a guest. So typically in my podcast, if you've watched or listened to any of the episodes, I usually have a guest who's an expert in the topic and we have more of a conversation. But for this month, this topic kept coming up. A lot of people were interested in this topic, and I wanted to do this topic. Good evening. Thank you for coming. And I wanted to have a conversation about it because I feel like this is something that we need to talk about. And that is, are we sacrificing our feminine energy in order to be successful? Hello from Yonkers, New York. Thank you for joining. So, since we do not have a guest, I would love for this to be interactive and conversational. So, feel free to put your comments in the chat or ask questions because I'm not claiming to have the answers. I am asking the question. I have some opinions, but I want to explore this topic because I think it's an important topic. And when I researched it, there were some really interesting things that I found out that I want to share. So, one of the first things is that as a coach, I am a core energy coach. And what that means for my coaching philosophy is that I believe that we have a mixture of different types of energy. Some types of energy are catabolic and they're restricting and they're draining, and over time, they can cause us harm. Other types of energy are anabolic and they're expanding, healing, thriving types of energy. So that's the energy perspective that I come from, that we have catabolic energy that causes us stress, and we have anabolic energy that brings us peace and a sense of purpose. And my job is to help us shift from catabolic to anabolic energy. But I also believe that in this world of talk about energy, that there is masculine energy and feminine energy. I mean, I think that as human beings, we can see that there is different type of energy. And as a Christian in the Bible, I think the first thing that I notice is that God talks about creating us, men and women, in his image, which means that there are feminine aspects and masculine aspects that kind of make up one. And I remember when I was younger and I did a lot of reading from Eastern cultures and learning about yin and yang, and how when you balance the yin with the yang, that you get harmony. And so I feel that sometimes as women, as successful professional women, we are leaning more into the yang, which is traditionally known as masculine energy, than the yin, and that has certain effects on us. So I'm not speaking of it from a perspective of goddess or divine energy in that aspect. I'm not qualified to speak to it from that aspect, but I am speaking about it from an energetic perspective. And if you are qualified to speak of it from that aspect, feel free. So, what is feminine energy? And feminine energy is so much bigger than just having feminine characteristics. It is infinitely powerful. And if we are thinking about yin and yang, and we're thinking about the creator of the universe, which I refer to as God, and creating all things in perfect balance and harmony, then feminine energy is a half of that equation. It's the two cosmic forces, masculine energy and feminine energy. And they kind of oppose each other, but they also complement each other. So that means that regardless of gender, we all have both. We have some feminine energy and we have some masculine energy, and same goes for the other gender. But sometimes in this society where it's a patriarchal and a man-led society, we have to lean into our masculine energy just to get anything done, just to accomplish the task that we want to accomplish. And if anybody has experienced that or is feeling that, definitely you can put it in the comments, the examples of how you feel like you have to lean into your masculine energy and the effects that that has on you, because I feel like it does have an effect on us. I know that when the rules are set up to be competitive, to be, corporate America, you're climbing a ladder. You got to push this one down in order to get to the next rung, to have success for yourself. I feel like that's more leaning into masculine energy, that competitive energy. I think feminine energy is naturally more collaborative and community oriented and nurturing. But if you try to do that in corporate America, you'll get walked all over. So we spend time in that masculine side of our energy, being competitive and trying to get to the next level. So what are some of your examples of how you feel like you might spend a lot of time in masculine energy? And I am not placing any judgments on anything. So if we think about what some of the characteristics of feminine energy are, when I did my research, this is what I found. Intuitive, our intuition, our mother wit, that's part of our feminine energy. Collaborative, like I just mentioned, wanting to collaborate with people, wanting to have a win-win scenario is more of our feminine energy. Nurturing, nurturing, not just taking care of children, but taking care of other people, taking care of things, that nurturing energy. Emotional, emotional is listed as one of those characteristics of feminine energy. And I think for such a long time, we felt ashamed of emotions. Oh, I'm being too emotional. But emotions were given to us for a reason. We have emotions for a reason. So why is it something to be ashamed of? Why is it something that we want to pull back from? And I think that's because being in a male dominated society, some of these feminine characteristics and the feminine energy has been deemed as inferior. Creativity is part of our sort of feminine energy, the ability to create. We as women have the ability to create life. So creativity falls into the feminine energy, as does sensuality and compassion, gentleness, flowing, present, and receptive. So those were all of the characteristics I found when I did my research. If you have other characteristics you would like to add to the list, feel free to add those in the comments. Or if you disagree with these characteristics, remember we are having a conversation because I am not an expert, but I wanted to open this topic up for conversation. The one thing that I really loved when I found out is that being overdoing is part of our feminine energy. And I know that that's one of the things that I find that a lot of people that I work with as a coach struggle with, the being over the doing. We have task lists that go on for days, right? And we take one task list and transfer it to the next task list. We're doing something from the time we wake up in the morning to the time that we go to bed at night. But if we lean more into our feminine energy and lean into being instead of doing, we can put the task list away and just be present in the moment. Just figure out who we are authentically when we are just being. And that is a wonderful space, a wonderful energetic space to be in. Like I talked about the anabolic energy and the catabolic energy. Getting to a place where you can just exist and be and not have to do is definitely one of the higher anabolic energy states. So as I'm looking at the masculine versus the feminine, I'm finding, and this may just be a coincidence, that a lot of the masculine energy traits are catabolic. They are that level 1, that level 2, that conflict, that competition, that frustration, that push, that all of those things. And a lot of the feminine energy is in the anabolic spaces where we are nurturing. That's level 4 energy. where we're seeing win-wins because we're collaborating. That's level 5 energy. Where we are seeing the purpose and the connectivity and leaning into our intuition. That's level 6 energy. So that's just interesting. That's something that I'm learning now. So also focusing on relationships, alignment with nature and its cycles, emotional intelligence, collaboration and community building, receptivity, being receptive, nurturing, and intuition. And we already talked about the being over the doing. So these are some of the ways that we can connect with our feminine energy. Now, there are a lot of myths out there about feminine energy. And I'm not going to go into all of the myths because I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just exploring it as a topic of conversation, as a way to help us achieve our goals with more ease and flow. Because if we're able to balance our energy so that we're balancing the masculine with the feminine, then I know that we're able to achieve our goals with more ease and flow instead of constantly feeling like we're pushing up against a brick wall. But one of the myths that I did want to explore, because I think that this one is really important, is that feminine energy is not compatible with success. Okay, that is a myth. That is not true. Feminine energy is compatible with success. So the world of business, corporate America, it can even be academic America, it can be the church, it can be lots of different institutions. The world of business is defined by patriarchal structures. All you have to do is look at the Catholic Church and the priests and the hierarchy. It celebrates and rewards primarily masculine traits like ambition, assertiveness, and competitiveness. And there's nothing wrong with any of those traits. I definitely have ambition, I'm assertive, and I am competitive. And I think we all are, and we all should be, but not at the expense of everything else that we are. I'm always conscious of realigning with my most authentic self. And if I'm being honest, my most authentic self is not just competitive and ambitious and assertive. It is also all of those feminine things that I just mentioned, the feminine energy of intuition and collaboration and nurturing and being emotional and all of those things. So being able to marry the two and allow the two to push and pull from one another and have that yin and yang has been really important for me in realigning with my most authentic self. So we're busting the myth that feminine energy is not compatible with success. And I hear one of us saying it is definitely a myth. So we know that that myth is being promulgated by men who are in control of society. But what happens is it causes us to suppress our feminine energy. And it exposes a deep-rooted fear that a lot of us have, that leading with gentleness and intuition will have us judged as incompetent, weak, and overly emotional. And I can think of an example in my life where I experienced this. When I was starting my Jack and Jill chapter in Western Maryland, so I was the founder and the president. I was leading in that space. And I was getting a lot of pressure from around me to lead in a more aggressive manner, to just lay down the law, to just be, aggressive and no holds bar, take no prisoners. But that wasn't who I was authentically. And I actually went and found a coach because I was struggling with this so much. And my coach really helped me to see that God had given me that purpose and that assignment, and to get clear on what that assignment was. And that assignment was to lead with love. That was my assignment, no matter the fact that I didn't like the assignment, that was the assignment, was to lead with love and to be a nurturing figure. I was assertive when I needed to be assertive. I was productive. But that was a successful strategy because that was the assignment that I was given. Now, different leaders lead differently, but every time I try to lead from a place of just being overly assertive and overly, firm, it did not work for me because that's not who I was, and that was not the assignment that I was given. So, thank you for saying that. We absolutely need balance between the two. We need balance. So embracing that feminine energy can actually be a powerful tool for success. And it allows us to tap into our creativity and our emotional intelligence. Let me tell you, to this day, I have people who never understood my leadership style. And 7, 8 years later, they have come back to me and said, thank you. They have come back to me because they've lived life long enough and maybe tapped into their feminine energy long enough to understand that that's not being weak. It's not being ineffective. It's not being any of those things, that we are allowed to use our feminine energy as leaders and we can still be successful. And I'm happy to say that the chapter is wildly successful, just won awards. But that was what I had to do to lead in that space in that period of time. So why do we need feminine energy? So someone just said that we definitely need a balance. Absolutely, we need a balance between masculine energy and feminine energy. But one of the characteristics I mentioned was collaboration. And boy, do we need collaboration. Another characteristic is community building. And boy, do we need community building. I think we have let the pendulum swing too far to one side of rugged individualism and everybody can do for themselves, that we are hurting as a society. And so swinging to the other side and pulling in some of our feminine energy can help us balance out that individualism with collaboration and with community building. So I think it's very important, and it's an essential part of the human experience. Life wouldn't be as full if we didn't have both sides of the spectrum. So how do you know if you have too much masculine energy? Because some of us have operated in this way all of our lives. How do we even know if we have too much masculine energy? Well, there are some signs and there are some symptoms. And so I think it's important for us to go over what those signs and symptoms are. If you are overly competitive and driven to succeed at all costs, that means you burn your bridges. It doesn't matter what the cost is, you have to succeed. That may be a sign that you have too much masculine energy. If you have difficulty relaxing and find it hard to disconnect from work or other obligations, that may mean that you have too much masculine energy. And I think that that's something that a lot of us can probably relate to. We're going, doing, that when we have the opportunity to relax, it feels uncomfortable. It's like, what is this? Like, I should be doing something. I should be cleaning something. I should be doing something. Number 3, if you dismiss your emotions and your intuition when making decisions. Our emotions are there for a reason. They are very informative to us. When we take our emotions, we take our knowledge, we take our thoughts, we take all of it into consideration, and our intuition, I think that we can make the most informed decision possible. So not ignoring our emotions, not ignoring our intuition. Another symptom is you struggle with vulnerability and find it hard to share your emotions with others. Yeah. When we are in a situation that rewards competitiveness and rewards being a winner over all else, it's hard to be vulnerable and to admit that you've made a mistake or admit that there's something that you don't know or share your emotions with other people. But we miss out on so much of life when we're not able to be vulnerable. There's so much strength in vulnerability. Brene Brown is one of my favorite authors, and she talks a lot about vulnerability. I think sometimes where we get stuck as leaders, I do a lot of executive coaching, is with our inability to be vulnerable. I think you can only get to a certain level of leadership without being vulnerable. And then once you're trying to go to that next level, you have to learn how to be vulnerable, because if people don't see you as being human, if they can't relate to you, it's going to be hard for them to follow you. So if you struggle with that, that may be a sign that you're leaning more into the masculine. Have any of these touched on anything that anyone has experienced so far? Any of these signs? The next one is that you have a need for control and cannot surrender or let go. A lot of us feel that that's just because we're type A people, or we are, highly productive people, and we're goal oriented. And that's true. But that's part of our masculine energy. And if we're not able to let go of that control sometimes, to our detriment, sometimes we want to control things to the point that we are exhausted because we have to do it all the time, every time, because we don't believe anybody else can do it right. So that can be detrimental to our well-being. So that's another symptom. If you struggle to receive pleasure and intimacy, that can be another symptom that you're leaning more into your masculine energy, or a little bit too much into your masculine energy, and need to come over a little bit more into your feminine energy and that sensuality. If you're disconnected from your physical body, and I guess people who are disconnected from their physical body, like you don't feel pain, you're not in tune with what your body is telling you. Sometimes our bodies can tell us that we're stressed out before we feel it emotionally. We can feel the tension in our neck. We get a headache. We get a stomach ache. We get chest pain. And sometimes we're so disconnected from our physical bodies that we don't even notice those signs and symptoms, or we don't notice what our bodies are trying to tell us. If we reconnect a little bit more with our feminine energy, we may reconnect to our bodies and our physical selves. As women, we have lots of things that our bodies are telling us as our hormones shift and we go through these cyclical changes. Our bodies communicate with us a lot. Another sign is that you struggle with relationships and find it hard to connect with others on an emotional level. And then number 10 is you have a tendency to judge yourself and others harshly. So I talked about the core energy model that I use in my coaching, and how catabolic energy is, that a lot of the masculine energy is in catabolic energy. One of the main characteristics of catabolic energy is judgment. And when you're in the lower energy levels, there's a lot of judgment of others, judgment of self. And as you go up the energy levels and become more anabolic, have more freedom, and you're thriving, more peace, more passion, the judgment lessens to the point that at the highest levels of anabolic energy, there is no judgment. So I just really find this interesting how it correlates. I'm not saying that all men are catabolic, because we know masculine energy exists in men and in women. But I am saying that if we look at the statistics of violence and things that are perpetrated in society, a lot of masculine characteristics are more associated with those acts. So it's really important to kind of not have too much masculine energy and to balance it out. And then the last one, we might recognize ourselves in this one, is if you feel a sense of burnout or exhaustion from constantly pushing yourself. That can be a sign that you are leaning too much into your masculine energy and not enough into your feminine energy. I thought that those were really interesting. I would love to hear anybody's thoughts or opinions on that list about signs and symptoms of leaning into your masculine energy instead of your feminine energy. And so I wanted to share some ways that we can increase our feminine energy. So ways that we can increase our feminine energy is by taking time to recharge and rest. It's okay. We don't have to constantly be doing something. We don't have to be cooking, cleaning, laundry, folding, even exercising sometimes is because we feel like we need to constantly be doing something. We can rest and recharge, even if that means just sitting. I had 1 month with my coaching group, which was all about rest. And our monthly challenge was to take more naps. And that was our challenge. And it was difficult for some people to take naps because they're like, take naps? What is that? I don't have time to take a nap. But if we don't rest and recharge and fill our cups, then we will constantly be operating on empty or half full. Connecting with nature is another way to increase our feminine energy. Going outside, walking, connecting with nature, uh, sometimes even just watching videos of nature and animals and things like that helps us to connect to our feminine energy. Practicing mindfulness, either through breath work or meditation or journaling. Those things help us to connect to our feminine energy and helps us to shift from catabolic energy to anabolic energy. Expressing our emotions and learning to communicate non-aggressively or non-violently. That is another way to join a women's circle or a men's circle, because a lot of men need to connect with their feminine energy too. And not just, I'm not talking about sexuality, but I'm talking about the feminine energy of nurturing and of collaborating and of community building and of listening to your intuition and of empathy and all of those things. So I think that this is for both men and women, that a lot of us are out of balance with connecting with our feminine energy. And engaging in creative activities. Did you know that singing is the most powerful way to shift your energy and shift your mood? If you are feeling down, if you've got heavy stuff going on, one of the most effective things you can do is sing. And you don't have to have a good singing voice. So you can sing in your shower, you can sing in your car, but singing is one of the most effective ways to shift your energy. Dancing, writing, being creative, painting, any of those things helps us to increase our feminine energy. Focusing on community, being in community, being here. We're in community with one another, even though we can't see each other. This is a communal space. The SOAR Circle Facebook group is a community. We check in with each other. We share with each other. That also helps us increase our feminine energy. Practicing empathy and active listening. That's one of the things that I think that some of us do naturally and some of us can work on, just being more empathetic. I think in the world of social media, everybody's so mean and judgmental. And so recognizing that that's not real life, and that in real life, we want to practice empathy and active listening, just listening to listen, not to give advice, not to answer, being engaged with the person as they're speaking, being empathetic with them as they're speaking, knowing that you may not have the answers or you may have no idea how they are feeling because you haven't experienced it, but just being present in that space with them. And allowing ourselves to receive. This is a big one. Some of us love to give. I like to give. We want to give, we want to give, we want to give. But it's uncomfortable for us to receive. Leaning into our feminine energy means that we allow ourselves to receive grace, to receive forgiveness, to receive gifts, to receive love, to receive compliments. How many times are we uncomfortable when somebody compliments us? Receive that compliment. Let it sink in. Take it in. So being in a receptive place. And someone just said, listening to listen. Oh, I love that. Okay, so another way to do active listening is listening to listen. Not listening to speak, not listening to give advice or understand or mansplain or whatever, but listening to listen. Another way that we can increase our feminine energy is to create a sacred space for ourselves. I was looking at, I don't know, I'm a Beyonce fan, right? And so Beyonce just came out with a new hairline called Sacred, and it's spelled Cecred with an accent, but it's a play on the word sacred. And so they were interviewing her mom. Her mom's name is Tina, and she had a successful hair salon in Houston for many years. And so she was very active in creating this hair care line. And she said that her bedroom is her sacred space. And my sacred space is my closet. That's my prayer closet. That's my meditation closet. That's where I go when all the men in my family have gotten on my nerves and I just need my own space. I go in my closet. That's my sacred space. When I had my other house, I had a little sitting room off my bedroom, and I created that to be a sacred space. It was decorated in all of the colors. I had a nice little space to sit. I had my candles. It was just my sacred space. So I think we all need to have a sacred space for ourselves. And that also helps us to balance that yin and yang and to increase our feminine energy. Oh, this one is my favorite. Practicing gratitude. When we practice gratitude, that is, the article says that this is a way to increase our feminine energy. I know it to be true that practicing gratitude is definitely a way to increase our anabolic energy, which, we've been discovering during this conversation that anabolic energy and feminine energy are seeming to be kind of the same thing. But practicing gratitude is a phenomenal, phenomenal way to just be in a positive anabolic energy space. So I have a prompt on my phone every day at 9 a.m. that asks me, what are you grateful for? And I stop and I answer that question. And I try to come up with at least 3 things that I'm grateful for in that moment and for that day. A lot of times, I like to encourage people to do it in the evenings. 3 good things from the day, or 3 things that you're grateful for. You can either just think about it, say it to yourself, or write it down. But gratitude is gratifying. It's very gratifying. And I encourage you to create a sacred space for yourself. It is important. And another way to increase your feminine energy is to spend time exploring and connecting with your body. You can interpret that however you would like to interpret that. But there's lots of different ways that we connect with our body. It can be through stretching. It can be through breathing. It can be through touch, however you connect with your body. But spending time exploring and connecting with your body is another way. Listening to your inner voice when making decisions. When I make decisions, I always try to think about my values and if the decision aligns with my values, and also to not make a decision from a place of frustration or anger or overwhelm. So to center myself and quiet myself, because when I'm centered and quiet, I can hear that inner voice or that intuition, which is very wise in helping me to make decisions. So I think that's a great suggestion. And then the last suggestion for increasing your feminine energy is to start flowing instead of forcing. How do you flow instead of forcing? When you're in a situation where you feel like you're forcing, you're pushing, remind yourself, okay, I am reacting or responding out of more of my masculine energy. How can I put some more of my feminine energy in this equation so that it can be more of a flow instead of a force? When you get to that place of ease and flow, I feel like that is the ultimate place. You can be productive, getting lots done, but it doesn't even feel like work because you're doing what it is that you love and you're just flowing in your energy. You're just flowing in it. And that's a space that I aspire to be in every day. I'm not there every day, but I try to be there as often as possible. And when I'm not there, figure out what is getting in the way from me being there. So those were all of the suggestions that I found in my research. So I wanted to share that and just open up the conversation for us to explore um, some of those things that can increase our feminine energy, because I definitely think that many of us operate more in the masculine energy because we have to. We've been forced to in order to compete in a patriarchal society. So I know I posed the question at the beginning of this conversation: do we sacrifice our feminine energy in order to be successful? What's your answer to that question? I think that we do at times. I don't think it's conscious. I think it happens on a subconscious level. We just do what we have to do, and we are able to flex and we're able to tap into the skills that we need in the moment. But I think that we do neglect some of our feminine energy. Okay, somebody said most of the time. All right. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. Like I mentioned, this is my first solo podcast, but I thought that this topic was worth talking about. And hopefully, people will listen to the podcast and join the conversation as well. So, thank you for joining. Have a great evening and a great weekend. And hopefully, I'll see you in the SOAR circle. Bye bye.